Seriously, this whole thing with Deku has been a roller coaster of emotion and just heart in general. As Coda and the large woman, who we still don't know her name, with all the involvement she's had so far, and us still not knowing her name just feels really awkward. But Coda apologizes for not running over to Deku immediately, and he says that when the lady stood up and said all the stuff, it reminded him of how much he wanted to be like Deku and just be there for him like he was there for Coda. It's such a sweet moment. And Coda is bawling his eyes out with all this snot and stuff. It's like, oh, just poor little guy. And then the big lady picks him up and lets him know that, she had actually been turned away by several shelters. And that's something we don't get enough in this series of. And it actually kind of became a little bit of a small note in vigilantes or illegals, whichever you want to call it, about how larger people with quirks that cause them to be a little bit on the big side, seem a little bit more on the monstrous side, seems to sometimes get very discriminated against. There are a lot of places that aren't really tailor-made for them, and some people have a bit of a fear of them. They're called heteromorphs. And she had actually been rejected by this variety of places until she finally got to UA, which I really feel like that says something about the hero world in general that I wish Horikoshi would go into a little bit more about, but at the same time, that is a very tricky subject to try to tackle, and there's no real concrete answer for that. But she does say that she's glad that she actually got to see Deku again and thanks him for what he did. And just gives him this nice big hug. It's a really sweet moment. And the weirdest thing goes down, and we see the man who Deku was talking to in chapter 1 when that large villain was throwing down with Kamui Woods and Mount Lady and was talking to Deku about how he wanted to be a hero. The guy with the weird stars on his head. And I think this is absolutely excellent to have him be the one to kind of speak up for Deku. And he says the same things I've been saying ever since they got to the newly fortified UA, is that the people need to take a moment and think this through fully. The kid's not asking here to be here forever, to use this as a bunker, to stay here ad nauseum. It's you have supplies and you have a good amount of protection. He needs a moment of respite so that he can get back out there and try the fuck again. And I like it that you start to get a little bit of a discussion amongst the populace themselves as well. One guy calls out, why doesn't he just go to Shiketsu? And then the lady's just like, well, what difference would that actually make? And then the guy with the stars on his head goes on to give a very interesting analogy that for a lot of people for the longest time, they've mostly been spectators in the world of heroes. All Might shows up on the scene, you get to see him throw down, and then it's done. But after a certain point, people stopped looking at All Might as a man, as an actual person who was out there fighting and getting his hands dirty, actually putting forth the effort. Now everything you would see up on stage is just bursting out into your personal lives. You are living that performance, and it's a rough one. And in today's society, where things have gone, where those who actually were only heroes for wealth, fame, and glory, there's none of that anymore. The heroes have failed so many times that the remotest sense that there's any kind of monetary reward immediately after that is nonsensical. That's why so many heroes have just hung it up, because they just don't see a point to it anymore, and that really kind of, to a certain degree, shows how shallow their convictions can be, or just how much this whole situation have just grinded them down. Like, at this point, the people who are still putting forth the effort, what are they fighting for? The people aren't cheering for them. There's no money to be had. There's no adulation. It's just, oh, well, you managed to stop one catastrophe on to the next one. And the dude even goes on to highlight the one point that it's just like my favorite point of all that I've really been rallying behind. If you push away the people who have the best chance of actually fixing this situation, then what else are you going to do? What happens after all of this? How do you go back to the lives you're so craving for if there's nobody around left to try to fix it because they weren't able to rest, they weren't able to recuperate, they weren't able to get back out there and try again? You don't have the luxury of pushing away the people who are actively putting forth an effort to solve the problem at hand anymore. You're living in shelters. Your lives are uprooted. If the heroes go away, then what? That's the thing. If they die in battle over exhaustion, malnutrition, what then? There's nothing. You all get ruled over by the whims of a madman. It makes no sense in the end. And it goes back to other people who have said, well, why don't they just go to another location? Another location as fortified as UA? You mean like the shelters? Like, that's ultimately the thing. People in this society right now don't have the luxury of being spectators anymore. You have to either get on board or leave. See if you can make it out on your own. Like, seriously, if you don't like it, you don't have to stay. And then one kid, I think it was the kid who primarily started kind of shouting against the whole situation, questions. It's just like, we had heard rumors of a guy with multiple quirks, dressed in rags. No one knew if he was a villain or a hero or what, but he just wants some semblance of hope that if they give him time to rest, that he'll get back out there and try to make it so that the people can get back to their lives. And Deku, and honestly, the most sternest voice he can come up with, it's just like, with everyone together with me, yes, we can bring it all back. And thus the people have no choice but, to a certain degree, to relent. And you have the hero, I think Ectoplasm, I think it was his name. He comes out and greets Endeavor, Hawks, and Todoroki, telling them to come in, see the situation for themselves. Endeavor thinks about the fact that maybe they cause more harm to Deku than help, that their plan never actually had any progress to it, and all they did was just spin their wheels to get to this point right here. But Hawks doesn't feel that way. He feels that maybe this is also the power of One for All, something that's able to connect the hearts of people. It was something that helped to connect All Might to Deku, Deku to Class 1A, and to Aravati, to be able to just connect and open up to the hearts of the people because she knows Deku, knows the kind of person that he is. That's the naming for One for All. It is not a power that is just singularly for one person. It is a power to help and assist all people. One for all. One person who will help and assist all people. And you see a lot of the people who were so angry before with more softened looks in their eyes. And it's one of those things where people are not inherently terrible. We can be very selfish if given the chance. Yes, it's true. But in a lot of cases, sometimes all it takes is one person setting the example to bring out that better nature within us. That's our sense of reasoning there. The primal side of us tells us to be selfish, to grab whatever we can and hoard it as much as we can. But that intellectual side that sees the benefits of assisting your fellow man, doing for others, and they doing for you, or doing for something for someone else, creating a better world through positive action. That is a real thing. That is what allows humanity to march forward. That is the better nature of what it means to be a thinking, rational person. And Todoroki, he confronts his father that they need to do this together, speaking towards Dabi and the whole situation there. And Principal Nezu notes the fact that as he calls up Aizawa, I think Aizawa was listening in the whole time actually, that his class managed to do it. He managed to achieve what Nezu himself couldn't, and that was touch the hearts and minds of the people. And despite missing an eye, Aizawa is beaming as well as he can. We also see that he's been outfitted with a new robotic prosthesis. I mean, that's kind of the thing. You get a robotic leg and it's just like, oh, well, you got a robotic leg. It's almost like you never lost that leg. No, you try telling that to someone who has actually lost a limb. No, that's a heavy effect on your personal life right there, and just how you feel as a whole. But apparently Aizawa has been monitoring the situation with Kurogiri, and they've been trying to do something to reverse the nomufication process, I guess you could say. See if there's any way to kind of bring the person Kurogiri used to be back to the forefront and maybe learn a little bit more about the League of Villains. I mean, Aizawa did manage to get through to Shurakumo, even if just a little bit. So there's some part of him that still exists within Kurogiri, a hope within the darkness. And UA as a whole have been really doing their best to just kind of keep the possibility of someone like Himiki Toga from infiltrating, understanding how long her ability can last in terms of blood quantity, only admitting people after they've been quarantined for a little bit. Ugh, man, can't escape from quarantine, can you? Like, they have been taking every possible precaution, even analyzing the teleportation abilities from the one Nomu that Mirko had smashed, that's able to just transport people with that black goop. So there shouldn't be any way for them to just infiltrate UA under their nose or anything like that. And with that, knowing that they have as many advantages as they possibly can, Aizawa wants to begin the counterattack. Tip things a little bit more in their favor going forward. What that actually means is kind of anyone's guess, but I'm interested to see where we go from here on out. This was a very sweet chapter. It did not make me cry as much as the previous chapters have, but there was still a good amount of heart and feel-good moments, and it was always good to see that, Deku saved as many people as he could, and there was some payback on that end for his efforts. There was no easy way for this to go, and it all relied on people seeing reason, and whether or not you believe that the people would, that's a matter of perspective. But appealing to the thought that people would want to get back to their lives, that Deku is potentially the best option for returning to their average daily lives. I feel like that would resonate with the people the most. That understanding that you don't really have much of another option at this point. UA is a safe haven, but it's a safe haven for more than just the masses. So let's see how well that lasts. And we see All Might seeming to be walking away from UA. What's his plan? Where he's going? If he encounters Stain or not? It's very hard to say. I'm interested to see here where we go from here on out. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.